Hi, can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the law of love in nature, going on a completely sort of different angle than Umberto just did. And that is part of our purpose here today, is to bring the subject of love from different angles. And you might connect to one or another more strongly. So because my background is in midwifery, I make a connection to love and through maternity. And some of you might say, oh, yeah, I'm not a woman, or I'm not pregnant. Or I said, no, I just introduced the idea that we were all born. So we were all the object of maternity, because that is how we came into the world. We were all once a baby, and this is how we arrived. So it is relevant for all. And amongst the people that I was interested in my midwifery studies, there's a very famous obstetrician, a French obstetrician called Michel Audin, and he dedicated a lot of time to observing in a scientific way the process of giving birth and the behaviors involved in giving birth, and sort of making comparisons between the animals and the humans, and thinking what was going well, what was not going well with the process of birth. And he then wrote a book called The Scientification of Love. And I found it really interesting because he starts off, so he's coming from an obstetrician's point of view. So he doesn't declare he's a materialist or a spiritualist, but he's trying to come and understand from a biological perspective what is the relativity of love in these events. And one of the things says the difficulty in studying love from a scientific point of view is because love is such a wide word. It means so many different things to different people. And just Umberto was talking about spiritual love. So I'm going to perhaps introduce physical love. And now, why is that relevant? If we think about, if God, as the first question in the Spirit's book referred to, God is first cause of all things. And if we say that the creation of God's creation is a creation of love, then there must be imprints of love everywhere and in nature, because we are all part of nature. Nature is God's creation. So how can we discover these imprints of love that are in nature? And it's quite interesting if I just refer to something that it says in question 888 of the Spirit's book, which is a part about the law of love. It says, love of one another, for the divine law by which God governs all the worlds of the universe is the law of love. And it just seems like, this philosophical idea of love and the governing of the universes and the planets, how do you connect those? So the Spirit suggests that love is the law of attraction for living and organized beings, while attraction is the law of love for inorganic matter. So even when we think about the molecules and the atoms attracting each other and forming the minerals or whatever, in that attraction, we can see are the seeds of love that is bringing things together. And if we think about the animals, for example, for we have a body which is a very similar to animal bodies. And if we think, what are we? We are spirits. We are spirits having an experience in the material world. So we have an incarnation. We have taken on a human body in order to have this experience, which Joanna de Angelis, the Spirit, says, which she calls it, to live in a body is a fascinating blessing because of the possibilities of moral and spiritual development. I love how she says it's a fascinating blessing. So rather than being annoyed with our bodies or our lives, I think this is absolutely fascinating that we have this chance. And I would like to bring this idea of the importance of our bodies, our physical bodies, in our incarnation. For we are spirit, and we have free will, and we do think, but our bodies affect us a lot. Stop, they do. And sometimes we think that we can overcome our natural impulses, that we can put our will on our body, but we don't even know how our bodies work. We are not even aware of the systems that have been inbuilt into our bodies that are teaching us something. They are teaching us the law of love, whether we like it or not. And that is one of the things that Michel Audin says, when you look at a mother giving birth and then this relationship within the mother and the baby develops, he says, how do we learn to love? How does this happen? So we can have all these examples and think about, doing this or doing the other. But we do have, whether we like it or not, our body is teaching us something by the power of our hormones. So we think back at the days of the Spirits book and things, then our knowledge of hormones was very limited. Even nowadays, it's very limited. And I particularly like there's a famous Swedish scientist and who studied oxytocin. The reason she studied oxytocin was a feminist issue, because oxytocin is the hormone of love, and it's very connected to the feminine. And in science, there was a bias towards things that are masculine. So things that interest men are guided by the major scientists at the time, were always men. So she comes in and she studies, gives all her intelligence to study oxytocin with another Russian, and I can't remember the other lady, something that has to do with women a lot, but with men as well. And if you think about the history of humanity, and we think about, let's say, when I looked up the human instincts, you can find people say, oh, the human instincts, 5, 7, 10, all different ones. So, but there are two that are absolutely essential. The instinct of self-preservation and the instinct of reproduction. We are all affected by these. And the instinct of reproduction can be even a consideration, a part of the instinct of self-preservation. Because from a biological perspective, when we reproduce, our genes continue. We perpetuate our species. It is a survival. It's a self-preservation. So it could be even part of the same thing. So we do as having a body that has these natural instincts. And thinking about what the spirits tell us, we are all born simple and ignorant. And we are all on a journey of evolution. And we are all having many incarnations. And as we develop, we move away from being completely subjected to our body to being more spiritual, even in our body. So the spirits say we are much closer to the beginning than we are to the end. So we can't ignore the effect of our bodies on us. And getting to know ourselves, even getting to know our bodies, is really useful. And one of the things I say, introducing things like how do mothers and babies bond? How do they get to love one another? Because of this cocktail of hormones that come out. When the mother gives birth and she looks at her baby, she has a release of oxytocin, which is a hormone which reduces your suspicion of others and builds attachment with that which you are looking at. When you're having sex and you have orgasm, you also have a release of oxytocin. So people, when they look at each other, they form a bond. They trust each other. Their reserve and their suspicion is reduced. So every time that you're having a release of oxytocin, you're helping to bond. So this is a mechanical, biological mechanism that's inbuilt in all of us. And I was laughing because thinking about, like Umberto was saying, we can make lots of friends and things. One of the things that releases oxytocin is to hug. So when we hug one another, we create a bond. So when we come from the COVID days where we couldn't see each other in person, how important it is to hug, to touch, because it's our senses. It's our hugging, our seeing, our smelling, our tasting that help to release the oxytocin. When we move and now progress as spiritual beings, we can move from it having to happen in the body to just being in our minds. We go progressing that, but we all start off from the biology. So when a mother has her baby and she looks at that baby and she releases oxytocin, the baby is being handled and feeling warm and secure is also releasing oxytocin, and that connection is forming. Each time that mother is breastfeeding, she is releasing oxytocin and that baby as well. And it's interesting, the Swedish studies about oxytocin and men shows that men who look after their newborn babies release more oxytocin and they bond with their babies. So they're less likely to harm their babies. Now, if we lived in a society as it was in the past, where there was a lot of war, a lot of violence, and you needed a population of warriors, you don't want a baby full of oxytocin because they're not going to be a warrior. You want somebody who's going to be aggressive and go to fight and be a soldier. Can you see how we are changing our times now when we are talking about in maternity, about having dads present, about holding the baby skin to skin and releasing oxytocin? We are creating a world where love is more prevalent. And in the past, with instinct of survival, we were fighting everybody. We were fighting our neighbors. We were fighting our enemies. We were fighting nature. We would just fight because we need to survive. But Michel Audin suggests, and I guess other people are thinking about this, the population of the Earth has come to a point where we can't be fighting everybody all the time anymore, because our power of destruction has come to the point that if we all really have a full-out war, it's all going to go boom. And our instinct of self-preservation says we can't do that. So perhaps we need to try love. We need to try cooperation, because we need to survive. Because that is God's law inbuilt in our bodies, in which we are living, and which is affecting our spirits. So at the same time that we are progressing, we can see our bodies, by our very experience of being alive, are affecting us, are molding our spirits. But at the same time, our spirits are molding our bodies, because we are not just our bodies, we are spirit. So it is this interaction that's happening all the time. But the hormones of love, and for example, when you fall in love with somebody, now that, I went to a really good talk with a scientist from, I think she was probably from Oxford or something, and she talked about the cocktail of hormones that are released when you are, in the bar and you see somebody, or wherever you see, and your heart beats and your pupils dilate, shall I go, shall I speak, shall I not, and all this thinking, and you release all your protection, and you advance to be close to that object of attraction. And then when you come together, the release of oxytocin creates a feeling of pleasure. And we want to be happy. We want to feel pleasure. That is why we want repeated experiences in which we have connection with oxytocin. And the more you do it, the more you want it, because it becomes that surge. So it doesn't mean that you have to be having sex or having a baby. I say you're hugging a friend. But I say another one, that everybody in the UK is very fond of pets. When you stroke your cat or you stroke your dog, you release oxytocin. But your dog, your cat, also releases oxytocin, creating a bond between you, a bond of trust, because you are releasing these chemical signals to each other. So the other day I was babysitting my daughter's dog. And she lies there like this with her tummy up, because she wants a tummy rub. I rub her tummy, stop, and then her little paw comes on my hand, like, more, don't stop. So, okay. And I thought, this is so funny. She's asking for more, because it's pleasurable for her to have her tummy rubbed, because she's having that release of oxytocin. 2 days later, I'm babysitting my granddaughter, and I gave her a little tummy rub, like joking, whatever, and her little hand came, more, I want more tummy rub. I said, just like the dog. I said, just my granddaughter. But I said, just how this is a biological impulse to have that pleasure replicated. And just thinking another way that we release oxytocin, by sharing food. And this is very popular in lots of cultures. It's a way of showing love and sharing and creating bonds. Is sitting down to eat together and sharing food. For some people will say that ingesting food is almost like having an internal massage, and you also release the hormones of pleasure. So the pleasure is inbuilt as God's present to us to build love. So I say, whether we are thinking about it or not, it's our destiny. And our bodies are giving us the opportunity of living it in the flesh. So we will, of course, progress from something completely biological and animal to something more spiritual, but it is a step by step. And I just think that this is absolutely fascinating that we have nowadays this little bit of knowledge, because if in the past we knew nothing about the human body, now we know a little bit, but we have so much more to know. And as we go learning, we can then say, oh, okay, I get this now. So then we can contribute our intelligence and our application to enhance that. So we are not just suffering the biological impulses, but we're also making an effort. So a mother that is separated from her baby at birth because it's premature and goes to the neonatal unit or something like that, what do we do? In the past, in the hospital, we used to take a Polaroid photograph because it would be an instant reminder for the mom of her baby, so she can be connecting to the visual of her baby. But nowadays, of course, you've got mobile phone, and you directly FaceTime your baby from the neonatal unit to your bed if you're not well. Keeping that connection going, because we know that that is really important to keep those connections going, to get the oxytocin flowing, to facilitate the attachment that's going to make that mother, that father, look after that baby, allow them to survive by feeding them, by overcoming themselves. So the thing that you learn when you become a parent, when you become a mother, is abnegation. The needs of your baby comes first, and your needs that come second, and that is love. But it's a love that comes from a biological impulse. So how wonderful is that God has imprinted this into the creation. So from the very beginning of the molecules, from the planets, from the inorganic matter that's been the law of attraction that makes everything be where it is, under the law of physics that is all part of God's creation. We have even, how we are slowly being molded to be loving beings. So I'll leave those thoughts with you, and look out for more oxytocin in your lives. Thank you.